So this farm is completely pattern tiled on 60-foot centers. There are no structures on it. About where your white box is, as you can see, there's a larger waterway that at the bottom where the point is. Yep, that larger waterway actually ties into all of the tile that is on that property and feeds on down, continuing through the main tile line through that green track that goes to the right in my screen.
Thank you. Any stream or body of water or other noteworthy terrain features?
Were you asking about stream and terrain? Is that what you said?
Yeah, we're just running through kind of a standard list of questions.
Okay, that'll
Sorry.
help me in case we have audio. Yeah, so there are no streams that go through it. Obviously, when we have high water, that waterway will fill up with water, but at this point, there are no streams that are passing through that.
Okay, and no timber or forest.
There are some trees on the south corner, as you can see, of the property. Right there with your pointers. Yep.
Oh, go ahead, sorry. Correct. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
There are a line of trees that are on that fence line right there, as you can see, that have actually changed depending on when this Google map was taken. It's a little bit thicker.
Okay. Any easements held by a third party?
Yes, there is an easement that was granted on or about around March 1980 to Northern Natural Gas Company, who has changed names a few times, but there is an easement through the land for a natural gas line.
Any other feature or condition that might not be readily apparent and might affect or be affected by the proposed project?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Can you describe any specific concerns you may have and any recommendations you have for the board action to address your concerns?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. And I'm glad to have the opportunity to come up here and speak today as well on behalf of it. Our questions and concerns really, this has been a generational family farming, and it really are all of our decisions as land stewards and land lovers have been about what is next for the land and what makes sense for the land. And so taking an opportunity to look into what is being proposed, we've had some concerns about the poisonous gas line and questions that we feel haven't been answered. So questions and recommendations that I would have, right, are around the safety, right? We'd ask that the board, right, any decision that we make as a business owner, a small business owner and a strategist, that we make a decision based on a risk model. We take the opportunity to compare what choices that we're going to make or what opportunities or what the future looks like based on a risk model. Right now, we believe that we have not received, or I believe too, we have not received enough information. There's a lot of vagueness related to where will this be located, how large of a pipe will we have, what is the disbursement of this if it were to happen. We are significantly close to the school. We also are providers of the school. We do their FFA plots as well, and really concerned about the safety related to it. So my request would be this board consider landowners in regards to this and the decisions that they get to make in regards to their business and what risks they can actually mitigate. And what I mean by that, for example, you buy a car, right? You buy a car with a seatbelt on, and it gives you the opportunity to mitigate that risk. With all of the vagueness that's related to the location, the disbursements, the easement timing, we really aren't in a position that we believe to make a decision related to best that it aligns with our business strategy for this land in the future.
Thank you. Do you recommend an alternative route for the proposed line? And if so, describe that route and its advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah, I would love to say that my neighbors that are interested, right, to move this line, right, to those that show interest in this, but that makes it more of just my backyard problem. And I believe at this point, with the information, this is in Iowa and a community area. We're a small community where our fire department are volunteers, and they're going to be asked to be trained and to understand. And really, so moving it south would, although solve the not in my backyard problem, it doesn't solve the overall generality of the concerns that were raised and the reasons that we're not interested in putting this on our property.
Thank you. Are there questions for the witness from any of the parties? Thank you. Mr. Taylor with Sierra Club.
Thank you. Ms. Marson, I'm Wally Taylor. I represent the Sierra Club. And first of all, how many acres are on this parcel?
About 80 acres, I think you asked me the number of acres.
How close would the pipeline be to any buildings on your property?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that with the audio. Could you repeat?
Sure. How close to the pipeline would any buildings be on your property?
I'm sorry, I'm still not getting it to come through. It's mumbling like it was last night.
And maybe I'll stand back a ways. Is that better?
Yeah, that made it better. Thank you.
Okay. How close would the pipeline be to any buildings on your property?
Yeah, from the estimates that were provided, about 2,000 yards. So my husband and I live on the property that is the main operations. We have horses and animals here, and I actually work from home every day from this property.
Is any of the property in any USDA program like CRP or something like that?
I think, was the question, is there any CRP on that piece of land?
Or any similar USDA program land?
Still didn't catch it, sorry.
Is there any part of your land that's in any USDA government program like CRP or something similar?
That piece of land, no.
Is there any drainage tile on the property that you think would be impacted by the pipeline?
The summit host was going to try to put the questions in the chat. The audio still wasn't clear from Mr. Taylor.
Are there any drainage tiles that would be impacted by the pipeline?
Yes, the entire farm is tile patterned on 60-foot centers. That has been went over a number of years. If that were to be impacted or were to shift the ability to be able to accurately drain the water, there potentially would be an impact downward stream or to other lands. That property has a high water table. When we dug our basement for our new house in 2019 and we needed to dig a new well, we actually did not go with a basement because we hit water at 8 feet when they dug the walls, water. So we have an extremely high water table on that property without tile working, or it could potentially, if it were to clog the larger line that we showed earlier on the visual, there would be an impact downward stream to other landowners as well.
Do you believe your crops would be affected by the pipeline if it's installed in your property?
We do believe it'll be impacted, and looking at a multitude of ways, especially during if the tile's not prepared correctly, if we are not able to access the plant, access the farm. We believe the financial impact of the property will be impacted by any disruption to that tile. As well as any disruption to the flow of the land itself. We've spent a significant investment over the last 80 years that we've owned this property to ensure that water is moved correctly to allow for the best yield and outcomes of the property.
So can you better define or maybe even quantify the economic damages that you think you would incur because of Summit's pipeline?
Yeah, so we're fortunate. That piece of land averages about 90 CSR. Typically would produce anywhere between 200 and 250 bushels of corn per acre. That land is income that is shared by the family and has an impact as well. That piece, it is also part of a larger operation that is a generational farming with our cousins as well. So impacts to the ability to produce the expected yields and returns would impact the overall outcomes and revenue of our farms, as well as impact any future capabilities related to yields or decisions to improve other lands or to purchase equipment to upgrade. It would really limit our ability also to, if in the future, to make changes to the property that flowed with the economics of the generational decisions. We already have the one gas line on there, which limits any type of developmental ability. So adding another pipeline would also then further hinder our ability to make economical or business decisions that are conducive to the future of our farming operation for our next generations.
You had mentioned a waterway, but then in response to a question, you said there were no streams that the pipeline would cross. Can you kind of clarify that for me?
Yeah, I wouldn't say per se there's a dedicated stream. There's a waterway that over the last 80 years has significantly, when we get rain or unpredictable or large amounts of rain, it has created a lot of, it looks like a stream, isn't probably quite a stream, right, because there is so much water in this area, that the tiling that we have done is to move that water effectively without creating damage to any of our neighbors or our other crops as well.
Is this waterway a natural waterway?
When we type that question, I couldn't understand it.
Is that waterway a natural waterway?
It's a natural waterway that's been continued to be developed and maintained.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jorde?
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Can you hear me okay?
I think if you go back a little bit,
Okay.
it might be better on a Zoom.
All right, how's that? Is that okay?
That's better, thank you.
All right, great, thank you. Do you have any idea who Summit Carbon Solutions LLC is?
No, and that's a great point, right? Typically, when we make a business decision or when you go into a partnership with any of an entity, right, as a business owner, a small business owner, you want to know who that you're partnering with. The inability to determine who's essentially behind the curtain of the LLC leads some uncertainty into us, as we don't know who we're going into business with.
Are you aware of whether or not Summit has the right, if this was approved, to sell or assign or transfer the easement that would potentially be on your ground to anybody they want?
That is my understanding and the experience that we've experienced with the natural gas line that we already have running.
As between the natural gas pipeline, which you already have on your property, and the potential for a hazardous CO2 pipeline, from your perspective, are there any differences in terms of your risk perception or your feeling between those two pipelines?
Good question, thank you. The natural gas line, that's at the time the decision was made for my grandparents to determine that was viewed as a utility that would bring heat to a house, right? It was for the common good. I would put,
Hold on, Ms. Marson. Hold on, Ms. Marson.
Yes?
You didn't catch that? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, can you repeat that answer? Sorry, it came back a little garbled.
Okay. Is it better now?
Yeah, just maybe slow down just a touch for our court reporter.
Oh, for the court reporter, that's what you said. Okay. I can. So do you want me to would you like me to start now again?
Do you want to read back where you lost your court reporter, or do you just want to start with re-answering that question?
Okay.
Yeah.
So what our grandparents considered the utility line, the natural gas line, it was considered to be a benefit to the public and the community. That natural gas line at that time provided heat options for individuals in the community as well. It is running through it, and it supplies natural gas to our family farms as well as our neighbors. The carbon CO2 line that is considered, we're challenged in understanding how a carbon pipeline that it goes to nowhere right now has the capability to provide a common good in the same way that the natural gas line has. I view the differences, Mr. Jorde, that this is a utility, it's a public thing. You could essentially, if we were to sell, and you would be interested, no different when we had to tear down the old farmhouse because the water pushed the basement in and had to create a new house, we were able to reconnect that new house to the natural gas line, as well as our neighbors would be able to as well if they built. The carbon line, to me, doesn't appear to have any economic benefits to the community to be a common utility in that way. Has a lot of risk and a lot of ambiguity about the locations and the impacts as well. So we don't view the carbon line as a common item that is in the same realm as what that natural gas line was at the time.
How many family members roughly derive income or financially benefit from the parcel in question?
Yeah, so the three families from the current parcel. My husband and I are the tenants of that parcel to our aunt.
And I noticed on the aerial map that there appeared to be a homestead to the east. Is that correct?
We are, to the east. So where I'm sitting right now is where our home is, to the east of it.
All right. And you were asked a question by Mr. Taylor of how far you think that was from your 80-acre piece. It appeared from the map that we could see a homestead on the immediately adjacent parcel to the east, that it appears that would be much closer than 2,200 yards.
That was an estimate that was provided to me at one of the informational meetings where Summit actually measured it. Since we don't have the exact location listed, that was the estimate in measuring it from the pipeline to our back property of our barn.
And we're looking at a parcel, but we have no, well, is it your understanding that the pipeline is represented by that white line on towards the bottom? Is that your understanding of the representation of the potential route?
Correct. That is my understanding. And so they measured it for me at the meeting from the line to the back of the property line. So the south part of our property is where our horses are housed. So they measured from there to the where you can see the green grass.
Are you aware of any limiting factor on whether or not Summit, if granted approval to cross your property, can move that line closer to where your home is?
That is my understanding is from the easement as it reads now, that they have the capability to move that as deemed.
And does that cause you any concerns, given that the actual route, if approved, could be at the very northern portion of this 80 acres and immediately adjacent to your home?
Yeah, it would actually, if we can pop that back up, if it were to move any more to the north, it would start to move on to my husband's and our property that surrounds the home as well. So we have a great concern with that, Mr. Jorde. We are concerned about our safety. We are concerned about the community. We are concerned about if I'll be sitting here and worrying if my brother-in-law, who happens to be a volunteer firefighter, is going to have the tools to be able to come to our rescue if something would happen. So the lack of clarity that has been provided in where that exactly is being asked to be and the ambiguity in the easement does create quite a concern, and part of the reason why we've said no.
And do you understand that if the IUB approves this application, that Summit alone can move the route anywhere on that parcel without having to go back to the IUB for any permission?
We do understand that, and what we're here today, Mr. Jorde.
All right, so you understand that if the IUB were to approve eminent domain, they're approving it on the entirety of your entire parcel and not just a 50-foot permanent easement route. Do you understand that?
We do understand, and it's great concern to not understand that that has become such an ambiguity, right, Mr. Jorde? We are concerned that you're not really, when the natural gas line came through, they weren't clear, from my understanding, on where they were asking to be. This easement leads to, it appears that all of the rights of private ownership of private land that we've owned for 80 years, invested in, pay taxes on, and continue to thrive on, is now Summit's control of where they believe it's in their best interest, not where we would even as a partner determine where the best place to put that land is. That easement removes our ability to make business decisions related to that, as well as depending on when they would move it, when they would do this, how they would repair it, would also impact our ability to access this land potentially, or have an impact to the land next to our house and continued on as you move to the east for the other parcels that we own.
And have you been provided by Summit a plume model or CO2 air dispersion analysis so that you can be informed of the risks in case of a worst case unintended release, spill, or rupture?
So that would be one of my asks, that they release the disbursement model when the route is determined, where they're actually asking, so that we could make any decisions related to that. And if, which I don't believe the IUB board should do, if they were to approve this petition and this opportunity for eminent domain, that would allow us to take any mitigations. We would be happy to sign something, an NDA, but we really would, a landowner that's being asked to go share our land with Summit to understand what the potential risks are and if we would even survive it.
And do you think, do you have any feelings or thoughts on whether or not the IUB should approve eminent domain across your entire 80 acres without knowing what the plume modeling and dispersion analysis shows us?
I do not believe that they should approve that. If the concern is within the respective Iowa farmlanders owners who have committed here, we're asking for something that really should be part of a business model related to this pipeline. If you're going to run this across the state of Iowa, including our property, you should be able to provide this. It's no different if you go back to my car example earlier. If I buy a car and it's a new car, I'm provided a copy of the warranty. I'm provided a copy of the features. If the car comes around outside of the dealership and doesn't align with that, I have a right to have questions about that. Without knowing where the safety levels are, to know of our communities, if we will be, it questions the longevity of, will we want to continue to remain living in this area? Will our schools want to continue to remain with an unknown ability to know what is coming or what could happen? No company has a zero defect rate. It's not, I ride horses, same thing. It's not if you'll fall off, it's when and how bad will you get hurt. We need to be able to mitigate the risks and understand what we're being asked to give or provide to this company.
Do you understand they're seeking a perpetual and forever interest and rights across your land that also tells you what you can and can't do forever with your property?
We do understand that, and being a fourth generation, soon to be fifth generation farmer, we believe that the right of what this land should be used for is in our purview, right? It's in our business strategy. This company should not be able to tell us what we can and cannot do on this land. This is our land. They're not essentially just asking to pass through it. They're asking for more at every opportunity.
Do you believe there's any part of this proposed hazardous pipeline across your land in particular that is necessary for the public good or convenience?
I do not.
And what is your request that this IUB does in terms of decision making relative to your parcel?
At this point, I would request the IUB, if nothing else, pause. Right? At this point, there is at this point nowhere for this pipeline to go. It has been It's a pipeline to nowhere at this point, and cause the threat of eminent domain and provide the citizens in Iowa and the landowners of Iowa the necessary safety releases to understand what you're asking. I would also ask the IUB to extremely consider the easement and the ambiguity in this easement as a landowner. We are business strategists and we are farmers too. We need to know who we're going into business with, and we need to know what they're asking. And at this point, there is too much ambiguity for us, which is why we've said no. If it was only about money and we wanted to solve today, or it was in our backyard plan, we would have said yes. But we have proven over the history of 80 years of this land that we are looking for generational solutions. We are looking forward to the future, not necessarily today.
Has Summit offered you any portion of the 45Q tax credits that they seek to reap in profits by utilizing your land for their project?
No.
Thank you. I don't have anything further.
Thank you. Counties, Mr. Whipple? Yes, Ms. Marson, can you hear me okay?
If you back up a little bit, it was better with Mr. Jorde.
How about that? Is that better?
Yes, much better.
Okay. Don't get too close to the mics, right?
Yeah.
I just want to pick up on a couple of things that you testified about. You said the parcel is near the local school. Is that right?
That is correct. The school is south of the pipeline.
Do you know about how far?
Depending on where, are we going off the white proposed line?
Let's start with the line location, yes. How far from the line?
It's a half a mile. We would have to measure it to be exact.
Half a mile from the school, and is that a middle school, an elementary school?
So it's a small school. Our gotta get the R's right here. Rock Falls, Rockford, Rudd, and Marble Rock, RRMR, and it is from elementary all the way through 12th grade. It also offers a summer program that is called SOAR, where parents are able to bring their kids to the school. So it is in session full year round for a summer program with care, and then throughout the year with the different levels of grades.
So, do you know about how many students are in the district during the school year when they're in the building?
I can give you a rough estimate, but I think all of our kids are out of school at this time. The class sizes are about 40. Can do some math for you. About 500, I would say, would be a good estimate.
Okay, thank you. Now, you also said there's a nearby community. You're near the city of Rockford, is that right?
Correct.
And about how far from the city of Rockford is the line location?
2 miles, mile and a half on gravel, or somewhere in between there.
Okay. You said your brother-in-law, I think, is a volunteer firefighter?
My brother-in-law is a volunteer firefighter, correct?
If there had to be a response to the property, how far would your brother-in-law have to go to reach you? How close is emergency response to the parcel?
So I would say 3.5 miles for the volunteer fire department to get to, depending on where they would need to access it.
And where is the nearest hospital to the parcel?
Yeah, so there is a small community hospital in Charles City, which is east of here about 20 miles. There is a larger hospital, Mercy, in Mason City, Iowa, which is about 35 miles. And then Rochester, Minnesota has Mayo, which is 75 miles.
Okay, thank you. Just one more question. Are you worried about your ability to sell the property once there's an easement on it for the pipeline?
Is your question we're worried about of being able to sell the property?
Yes. Do you think it would be more difficult to sell it with an easement for the pipeline attached to it?
Well, it hasn't been for sale for 8 years, so, don't have any history to go off for you, right? And our intent was never to sell the farmland. Our intent was to move it to generational. I do believe that if we were to, right, and there was that easement right now without the clarity on it, that if I was going to purchase any of these lands, I would want to have a question about what that meant for me, and I would need clarity. So I do believe that another farmer that is a small farmer, or anybody that goes into business and purchases an asset this size would want to go through and analyze the risk of that easement on the property. So I do believe that it would have an impact. To what impact? It's never been for sale, so I don't have any data to give you.
Thank you, Ms. Marson.
Iowa Farm Bureau.
Thank you.
Hi, Mrs. Marson, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you.
Perfect. My name is David Myers, and I'm an attorney here representing the Iowa Farm Bureau Federation. So my first few questions are going to be kind of going over a little bit more about your property here. Is the property enrolled in any federal farm programs?
Not that I'm aware of, but now that I say that, I would need clarity to know if that waterway could have been at some point, in the past from a development point of view. But not that I'm aware of outside of anything related to, except for possibly the waterway.
Has the NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Services, designated any highly erodible land on the property?
Not that I'm aware of.
Has the NRCS designated any wetlands on the property?
Not that I'm aware of.
And has the NCRS designated any farm wetlands on the property?
Not that I'm aware of.
And circling back to kind of the federal farm programs, any crop insurance?
Yes.
And who is that through?
Always.
And for my next set of questions, let's just assume the Iowa Utilities Board grants the pipeline permit. Do you want Summit and or its successor to follow Iowa's ag land restoration rules?
Yes.
Again, if the board grants the permit, would you want to be able to consider signing an easement agreement under the best terms and compensation that Summit has been offering landowners?
I think I understand your question, but could you repeat it?
Yes. If the board grants the permit, would you want to be able to consider signing an easement agreement under the best terms and compensation that Summit has been offering other landowners?
It would be more than that to me, but yes, I would want the ability to negotiate within the easement as well.
Would you want the exact pipeline route across your property to be set in the board's orders?
We would appreciate the clarity on where that pipeline is being asked to be and have the exact information. Yes.
Do you want to be able to enter the easement area when Summit is not actively constructing on your property?
Yes, depending on the location. If we go with the visual that was up there with the white line, if we were not able to cross that easement, we would not be able to access that farmland in the south, east, and west.
And I think you mentioned it earlier, but do you know what size of pipe Summit is proposing for your property?
I do not. I've heard different, similar to how we hear from the weather. It could be 2, 4, 6, 8, 24 inches of snow. Same with the pipeline. Not sure what size it's going to be.
Would you be okay with Summit or its successor replacing the pipe at a later date with a larger pipe size?
No.
Would you like Summit to consult with you before it decides to change the grade of the land in the easement area from the original grade?
Absolutely.
If crop yield reductions in the easement area more than 3 years after the construction, let me start over. If you have crop yield reductions in the easement area more than 3 years after construction, would you expect Summit to continue to pay for your loss from the reduced crop yields?
Oh, well, we have 80 years of farming this land, so we have quite a lot of data that we can determine the performance of this land.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I have.
Mr. Dubinsky?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Marson, can you hear me okay?
I can, thank you.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions. You had mentioned that there is a northern natural gas line on the property, and I just want to get a feel for where that is. Am I correct that that crosses just above the center point of that property?
I think it's about more in the top fourth quarter, depending on where we're looking at here. I have a visual that, I didn't upload, but I can show, happy to share, but I think we're close, right? Where that's at.
So it crosses above, north of where that waterway is.
Correct.
Oh, no.
I believe it runs concurrently to the north side of the waterway.
I'm sorry, what was that, Ms. Marson?
It runs parallel. I can't point at the screen. I'm used to being able to point at the screen. I don't think it gave me a pointer. But it runs along the north side of the waterway, east and west.
And do you know how far the northern natural pipeline is from the buildings at the homestead parcel?
I do not.
Have you ever seen any sort of modeling of potential releases from the northern natural gas line? Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you. OCA?
Thank you. Ms. Marson, can you hear me all right?
I can, thank you.
Thank you. My name is John Lyon, an attorney with the Office of Consumer Advocate. I'd like to follow up on do I understand your testimony correctly that there are frequently, the land, your farmland at this parcel is frequently wet?
It was wet, and we've taken the steps to completely pattern tile it so that we do not have water. We just finished up another pattern tiling last year on more of the on the north. I'm gonna keep my directions straight here. Northeast corner. So now it is 100% pattern tile.
Okay. And then my last question. If eminent domain were to be granted on your parcel, and if you've already answered this, I apologize, is there any change from the white line shown that you would ask for on the route across this parcel?
At this point, right, I know that the landowners south of this parcel have signed easements or have expressed interest in easements. If this line were to move, ideally would move off, but that also then on the other side of it moves it closer to the school and does not mitigate those risks as well. So at this point where we're not interested in the line at all.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from the board? Commissioner Burns? Board Member Burns? Oh wait, did I miss one? Yeah, okay.
All right, Ms. Marson, can you hear me?
I can, thanks for taking.
Okay. Thank you for joining us today. Just a few questions, kind of some clarification off of some things that you've mentioned. Can you just repeat, I was not clear on when was the date of the easement for the northern natural? I think you'd stated a year.
I lost you at the end, Joseph. I don't know if it's determined. Okay, can you repeat your question?
Do you remember the year of the easement for northern natural?
I heard you say the easement for northern natural. What's the question?
Can you repeat the year?
What year? Yeah. on or about March of 1980.
And hopefully, I'll try to find the right distance here so I don't break up. Did you attend the public information meetings that were held in Floyd County or any other county concerning Summit's pipeline project?
I've attended the Floyd County meetings for each one that has been offered.
Okay, thank you. And then, did you participate in any negotiation conversations with Summit?
Participated in any conversations related to this piece of land with Summit?
Correct. So, and I don't know, I apologize. I hope we can.
Yeah.
So, upon conclusion of the public information meeting, the company can begin negotiations. Did you partake in those negotiations with the company, with Summit?
We did not.
Did they offer to have negotiations with you as the landowner? Did they try to make arrangements to have a negotiation or a conversation?
We received, Client has received a significant number of mailings in the mail, as well as communications related to it, but we have not had any conversations with Summit because we have been a no.
Okay, so Summit did attempt to reach out to you and have a conversation about negotiations, and you said no, correct? Did I hear you correctly? Okay.
And reached out to have conversations about an easement.
Okay, thank you. And then again, and I apologize for this technology and not being able to hear correctly. You did state that your neighbors are interested in the easement and having the pipeline go through their property. Is that correct?
My understanding from the last meeting that we attended in Floyd on the 8th, where the Summit was representatives were able to pull it up on their laptops. They had the listing and the visual and indicated that those that were in a neon green color had signed easements. And so looking at that picture, there are neighbors south of us that have signed easements.
Okay, thank you. And then again, just a point of clarification. So Northern Natural Gas goes through your property.
Yeah, how many times
And
you gonna have that?
they have, I guess I would think of it as a pipe going from their line to your home, providing you with natural gas. Is that correct? Did you state that?
Yeah, so the pipeline runs through our property, and then there are parallels that come off of that to provide to the home. There's a residence directly north of me, and we are both on a pipe that comes from the line that runs east and west that goes north to connect with both of those residences.
All right, thank you for that clarification. And I think, just for the sake of speaking the same language, so you were at the public information meetings, correct? You said, I think you stated twice. And at those public information meetings, it is Chapter 479B, which are the state's laws surrounding hazardous liquid pipelines. One of the definitions that's described is that CO2 and natural gas would both be a hazardous item, correct?
We need to reference it, but that is my understanding here. Yes.
Okay, so we're dealing with two hazardous materials.
But twice the opportunity.
And I believe that would conclude. I'm just checking over my notes here. Oh, do you know, so you stated that your brother-in-law is a volunteer on the local fire department. Do you know, does the local fire department receive safety training surrounding Northern Natural Gas's line?
They have, and since, again, not a fire department officer, so just in conversation
Sure.
with them, that they do receive training in regards to how to react to a natural gas. My understanding of the difference between the natural gas and carbon is that natural gas will react differently typically, where carbon is an asphyxiant and will remove oxygen from the air. So that changes the type of materials or tools that the volunteer fire department needs in their toolbox to be able to come to a rescue versus a natural gas eruption.
And thank you for that. And I apologize, I think I might have accidentally said Black Hills Energy instead of Northern Natural Gas at one point in time. We deal with a lot of different gas companies at the IUB, so my apologies if I mentioned the wrong
Black
one.
Hills Gas might be that, Black Hills Gas is who we currently pay our bill to, so that could have been through the original easement. I figured you would have questions on the first, so Northern National Gas was the first one, and they have since passed that.
All right, thank you for that clarification as well. I think that is all I have for you, so thank you for your time.
Thank you. Board Member Marson?
Ms. Marson, just one clarification question, if you can hear me all right. Do you know the approximate depth of the tiling?
No. Would it help if I would just email this in? It looks like it's at different depths here. Because some of it is, it's that 5 inches is one section. Looks like it's another 5 inches on this section. Oh, sorry, I'm reading inches to feet. It's 5 feet, sorry. It is 5 feet deep.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Marson. I believe that's all the questions we have.
Thank you.
We've got a question. I've got questions.
I just wanted to clarify the record if I could.
Okay, hold on. Oh, thank you. Okay, so, yep, we can go through a round of questions, but we are limiting to clarification or cross for what has already been said. Okay, and I've got a landowner in the back that's been waiting. So, okay, 1 second.
Hi, Jessica. Whoops. Hi, Jessica. Can you hear me? I'm Jean Colas with Colas Family Farms, and I'm a little confused. I'm not a lawyer or anything, but I am a landowner. And according to what you stated, you do not want, or you did not sign the easement for the CO2 carbon pipeline because it is not for the good of everyone, for the general public. It is basically for private profit. Is that correct?
Can you repeat what you said?
My impression is that you did not want to sign the easement at all because it is not for the public good. It is for private profit.
You might have to type it.
I don't know how to do that.
Well, the host is doing it. So I'm going to make sure I repeat so that you can hear. The question that was typed was, did you not sign the easement because it is not for the benefit?
Hold on 1 second, Jessica.
Was that your question?
Just hold
Yes,
on.
it was.
Hold on. Let's just, hold on, everybody. Just pause 1 second. Okay, you want her to have Ms. Kohler repeat her question and start over there. Okay. So I want to make sure that that is all clear on the record. So Ms. Kohler, I'm going to ask you to start over and repeat that question, and then make sure Jessica gets an opportunity to reply, and that way we make sure it's captured on the record. Appreciate it.
My question, Jessica, is did you not sign the easement because you did not feel it was for the public good? It was for personal or for private profit only?
When we reviewed the request, we were not able to determine how that it will align for the benefit of everyone.
Did you have conversation with Summit Carbon related to what they would do and what they would pay you if you signed the easement agreement?
We did not have any financial conversations. We received one mailer that had a contract for a land agent with dollar signs behind it to have a conversation with, but no amount.
So I'm getting the idea that with all the questioning pertaining to what they would pay you and what you would agree to if you had a conversation, would you in that case sign an easement in perpetuity? Or would you say no again because of the danger of it?
The money is not the only aspect, right? Because being part of a generational farming operation, we've made decisions based on that. Our business strategy hasn't been tied to financial gain only. It's been for the best interests of the land and the future generations. So we would not have signed just based on a dollar amount. We would have had the same questions and would require answers related to the pipeline.
And one of the main concerns might be because of the lives that could be affected by a rupture, since you don't know basically anything about the dispersion model.
Correct. We have no understanding of the risk that we're being asked to take on as a landowner and having this pipeline through our property.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And just to correct the record or clarify the record, Board Member Burns, in questioning Ms. Marsden, inadvertently said that natural gas is a hazardous liquid. I don't believe it is. I just want to make sure the record's clear on that.
Thank you. Mr. Jorde.
Thank you. Ma'am, you were asked a series of questions of whether or not you had conversations with Summit. Do you understand that you don't have to talk to anybody if you don't want to, including Summit Carbon Solutions LLC? We'll have to give that answer one more time, please.
I said yes, we understand we did not need to have conversations with Summit Carbon, and we've been recycling all of the paper on their behalf.
And so when a telemarketer calls you selling something that you don't want, do you feel like you have to stay on the phone or set up an appointment to talk to them?
Hold on. Go ahead. Go turn your mic on, please, Brett. Okay. They yell real loud. Okay. Mr. Dubinsky from Summit has objected, stating that Mr. Jorde's line of questioning is creeping beyond clarification. And so we just remind Mr. Jorde to please confine your questions to clarification of testimony already provided.
Mr. Dubinsky asked you a question of whether or not you saw a plume model relative to the 1980 natural gas pipeline, and I'm curious if you believe that natural gas pipelines and those risks in your mind are the same or similar to CO2 pipelines, or how do you view that?
Hold on, Jessica. Jessica, hold on. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Can you try the mic now, Mr. Dubinsky? Okay.
Dude,
Hold on.
what the fuck?
Got a new mic coming for you.
You guys are amateur hour. Why the fuck can you do this in a bigger city? Come on.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, so objection on a couple of grounds. First of all, that misstates the question I asked, which was not about a plume model specifically, but was about any modeling regarding what would happen in a release from the Northern Natural Gas pipeline. But also, again, this is just another round of examination. This is not a clarification question. And two things. First of all, if we go around and around and around, we're never going to conclude. But also, normally the applicant gets to go last, which, you know, if everyone else gets to keep going, that's a little hard to get to that point. So we object both procedurally and substantive to Mr. Jorde's questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Dubinsky. Mr. Jorde, please confine your questions to clarifications.
Okay, I'd like to clarify Mr. Dubinsky's question when his last question he asked you, which was his big question about natural gas pipelines versus CO2 pipelines. Do you understand the relevance or any relevance of in his question where he asked you about whether or not you had any plume or risk modeling on a natural gas pipeline?
Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Jorde continues to mischaracterize. I never mentioned a CO2 pipeline. I didn't ask the landowner to compare the two in any way. Mr. Jorde is just working his own testimony into his questions, and it's completely objectionable.
He asked the question.
Thank you.
That's the question.
If you would like to reply to
y-
Mr.
y-
Dubinsky.
Sure.
Mr. Jorde.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Jorde, no one has spoken over you, so let's
No.
try not to speak over anyone else.
You
We
got
will
it.
make sure that you have plenty of time to make yourself heard on the objection, but no one will be speaking over each other throughout the hearing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
Please state your response to the objection.
This has been speaking over the whole fucking time.
So-
buddy.
The question was of whether or not there was any type of dispersion or analysis related to natural gas pipelines. The answer was no, and therefore the presumption is, oh, well, you didn't care about that when it came to natural gas, but now you do to CO2 pipelines. I mean, that's the lingering presumption, and I think I'm allowed to clarify that with this witness.
I don't think that's a clarification. That is a new round of questioning. I'm entitled to ask my question in the way that I want to ask it, and presumptions are not part of the question.
Okay. I think we've beat this one to death. I'd like you to go ahead and proceed on with clarification questions.
Well, what I'm trying to clarify with this witness is whether or not you perceive the risks of a CO2 pipeline similar to those of the existing natural gas pipeline that is on your land.
Objection, Your Honor. A clarification is of the nature of Mr. Taylor correcting a fact that was misstated or misunderstood. This is not a clarification. This is asking for a new answer that is substantive and different than what was obtained in my line of questioning. That is not a clarification.
Thank you. Mr. Jorde.
Yeah, so, I mean, the way this, I will be fine to be corrected, but the way this should work is if the board, the three most important people, ask a question, or if the applicant asks a question, that we have one more round to pick up on those questions. I mean, that's what it is. They ask a question, oh, I need to follow up on that question. And so I don't know if we're getting, tripped up on the word clarify, but I mean, they raised a topic and we should be able to touch on that topic.
Your Honor, as I've said in several prior meetings, it's unfortunate that Mr. Jorde is not familiar with board practice, but that is just simply never how it has been done. That when we go around, the applicant goes last. We rarely, especially in hearings this large, do a second round. And the fact, and traditionally, after the board, we don't take another round for people to pick up board questioning. That's just not how it is normally done in board proceedings. And
You
Mr.
bitches
Jordy's
haven't even been
assumption
on the
that
board.
that's the proper practice is just not how it is traditionally done in front of the board.
Well, I'm happy to follow up on that. I mean, the way it's not done is to have the Exhibit H landowners, like we're doing here, go first before applicant. The way it's not done is to have applicant have free reign of when the schedule is, and 500 people that want to testify have no idea and have the cost of hotel rooms and gas to be here. That's how it's not done. And so, with all due respect to Mr. Dublinsky, this is nothing like it's ever been done.
Just appreciate it if you confine your comments to the objection and not the general procedure.
I'm confining him to his point of, well, the way it always happens. We're way beyond the way it always happens. So with all due respect, this could have been done 10 minutes ago if I could have just asked that single question.
So I think we have two very talented attorneys giving us a very good demonstration on procedure and the very definition of what is clarifying and what is not. But for the rest of us, I think we'd like to move into the next questions and move on. So, Mr. Jorde, please ask your clarification question. And you have both made your points, and now we can move on.
Okay. The clarification question is, do you see a difference in the risk profile between a CO2 pipeline and a natural gas pipeline, yes or no? And what is that difference?
One, my grandparents made this decision at the time to grant this natural gas line. They would have been asking for the items that they believe as the landowners at that time to determine the risk for the land and the future of the land. The natural gas line has been there since 1982 or 1980, which has been 43 years, and we are confident in the ability of the natural gas line and stability. Carbon, to us, in my understanding, is a newer technology, and the risk of it, of the difference. Gas will blow up. Carbon is an asphyxiant that we have used previously in livestock issues.
Thank you, nothing further.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Marson, appreciate it. Thank you. I think we're done.
Thank you.
Mr. Jorde, do you mind flipping your placard? Thank you. Helps. Okay.